Well, welcome everybody to the Wisconsin Women in Conservation Summer Camp. We're so glad you could join us today. We have other Wisconsin Women in Conservation team members that are on the call today. If you are with Wisconsin team members, if you can wave your hand so that those that are joining us can see who that is, that'd be awesome. Feel free to munch your lunch. We do have two fantastic speakers who are going to be sharing some information with us today. Make sure that everyone can hear. We are going to be muting you so that we can make sure everybody can hear the speakers as they present throughout the day.
Thanks, Sarah. Hello, everyone. My name is Elena. I'm the Southwest Region Coordinator. And with that, I would like to introduce Esther, who is the lead on the Wisconsin Women in Conservation Project. Welcome, Esther.
Hey, everyone. Good morning. Thanks for coming and joining us. I'm going to give you a short update about what Vivek is and what we've been up to over the last 2 years. Vivek, we started out the summer webinar series that's starting out today. We have 3 more coming up. This is the first one in the series of 4. Today, it's about creating a habitat for birds, women championing feathered friends. Since you're all here, I am presuming you know about Vivek a lot. You've been with us through the journey for 2 years. We started out in 2020, October. We are partnering with different organizations in order to make this happen in Wisconsin. So the USDA NRCS Wisconsin is our funder. They make this possible that we could all get together and bring these kind of programming for women in Wisconsin. Marble Seed, Wisconsin Farmers Union, and Renewing the Countryside are other partners in this program. I myself belong to Michael Fields Agricultural Institute, and we lead this program of Wisconsin Women in Conservation. As Wisconsin Women in Conservation, what do? We work with women landowners who farm, who are non-operators, who just own land, also beginning farmers. So we work with all kinds of women who are involved with the land. The main aim is to create a safe space to share stories and
how are you?
And to connect with one another, to meet other women who are passionate about conservation, and to find a network of peers and professionals to thrive with. We've been very fortunate to hear these stories from women who come to our program over the 2 years to say how they have really been helped by other women who found, and how they've found connections with other women in the area through this program. So that's what we seek to do. And we also, everyone, us included, we learn together about building a healthy soil. We bring resource people, especially professionals, to come and share of their knowledge, but also the more so learning happens between the peers. We help create a support group, and then we also provide technical help for conservation plans. If you're interested in one for your land, you have to and if one of our coordinators is working in your region, then we would really it'd be good for you to connect with the coordinators, because we could help get that conservation plan for your land. And then we collaboratively steward our land for future generations. That's one of the important goals that we work with, is to steward our land better. And also we help to build a local community to support and grow. So far in 2020 to December 2023, we are working in 6 tri-county clusters of Wisconsin, in different regions of Wisconsin: the Northwest, the Northeast, the Southwest, the Southeast, and the West Central, and also through Soil Sisters. And so far, we have about 2,400 women who are actively engaged in events and newsletters, which is like phenomenal to have those women networking with each other. We have completed 45 conservation plans. So the women have these plans on their hand. It was all drawn out with the involvement of the women landowners. So it's also taken, so the conservation plan has taken into account the dreams and the goals that women themselves have for their land, along with what's possible on their land based upon the resources and the limitations of the land. There are 60 more in progress, land walks done, intake ponds garden, and we are processing those for getting those conservation plans in their hands. We've completed 20 Zoom events in different facets. We have had 28 learning circles over 2 years. We've finished 12 field days and 12 educator events. We have about 220 to 250 evaluations to help our research process. And we just completed the successful first ever Wisconsin Conservation Educators Conference in Stevens Point. This was a sold out event even before a month beginning before the event. So there are a lot of events that's lined up for 2023. The spring learning circles are going on now. The Northeast events are going on today, tomorrow. We have a series of field days planned for this summer, and then it'll be followed by the fall learning circles. The summer webinars are kickstarting today. And the crowning glory for the Vivek one would be the launch of the lookbook, where we kind of bring out the stories of women in conservation in Wisconsin, what they do on their land, and what are the advice they would give for other women who try to do the same in different geographical zones and different domains. So that's going to come up in October. We also provide mentor support through conservation coaches. They bring professional program resources to your doorstep, providing technical help, as I mentioned. And these are all that's going to go on this year as well. And we have plans for other educator network coming up this year. I invite you all to be a part of our programming. If there's a listserv, you can sign up for it by sending an email to info@vivek.org saying that you want to be a part of the listserv. These are places where women network with one another, ask their questions about how to manage their land and how to move about some new things for them, like how do I get some advice on that. These are women helping out one another. If you want to be a part of that, please send us an email. And please engage with our website, www.vivek.org. And there's a lot of events that's live now. Take part and be a part of this great program. Thank you.
Thanks so much for that, Esther. It's such a pleasure to see some of the different things that Wisconsin Women in Conservation have done. It's now my pleasure to introduce to you Cindy. Cindy Becker works in Southwest Wisconsin as a conservation liaison, connecting landowners with technical and financial assistance available through the Southern Driftless Grasslands Partnership. She's been involved in private land conservation in the region since 2008. Cindy has co-authored a handbook for landowners entitled Reading the Driftless Landscape, and more recently has been involved in developing a variety of outreach tools on pollinators, grassland birds, and climate-smart conservation practices. Cindy, I am going to hand it over to you.
Sweet, thank you. So I work for the Southern Driftless Grasslands, which is a public-private partnership in Southwest Wisconsin. We care about grasslands, and I'm going to go into some definitions of what that, what does that mean in Wisconsin a little bit further into this talk. But one of our primary conservation concerns is grassland birds, and it is truly a driving factor for a lot of what we do. There'll be some links to the partnership further down the road for those who are interested in learning more about the partnership. But I want to talk right now about birds here in Wisconsin. And I saw in the chats that most of you were reflecting on frog calls and plants and foraging. And I feel like I'm in the right community, because that is truly where my heart has been in the past. Is I look to the ground, I'm looking at plants. Once starting with this partnership, I started looking up, and it's been amazing the amount of diversity there is on the wing around us, particularly when you're in these open spaces and the plethora of grassland birds that are calling. After a while, they become like friends that you can say hello to when you're walking around. So I'd encourage all of you after this to maybe look at some of these resources and get a bit more involved. But in the last 5 years, in 2015 to 19, there was a breeding bird survey that was done throughout the state, and we found that 243 species of birds are breeding in the state throughout the year, very most particularly during the summer months. And the reason for that is that Wisconsin provides habitat for birds during the breeding season and migration in winter because of where we are located. We are a part of the Atlantic America's Flyway. Let's see if you can see my cursor. We are somewhere right around there. This map is so big that it doesn't even show the Great Lakes, but in scale. And so just think about that little bird that is it's a summer resident here in Wisconsin, but it flies back and forth to South America or Central America during its non-breeding season. So during our winters and where it goes south to be warm. So it's just an absolute amazing thing that these birds are basically have decided that our space is where they want to be during the summers. And there's key reasons why that is. Even though we have all that diversity, there's a lot of really sad or disturbing trends that are going on. If any of you are interested in learning more about this, I definitely would advise the 3billionbirds.org website that's listed in the lower right corner. When it comes to different groups of birds, grassland birds are one of the groups that are suffering the most significant decline. And I think from my own perspective, being someone who's spent a lot of time in prairies, I can also say that I'm hearing less. So here's a great example of one of those in particular. Bobolink is my favorite bird. It sounds like R2-D2 on the wing. It's absolutely insane. You got to listen to its call one time if you're not familiar with it. This graph is showing what's going on, and this is not unusual for these species. In our world, we're a mecca. We're what we call almost we could be a source of these bird species instead of a sink for these bird species with the right farming practices and also conservation practices in place. And that's what I wanted to really talk about today. Because at the end of the day, it's like, what is a grassland in Wisconsin? We know what a grassland is in the Great Plains, right? Big open vast fields, but in Wisconsin, it's many things because birds use a lot of what we call surrogate grasslands in place of those great prairies. Here's a remnant prairie. Also a CRP planting provides that open space that they need. Cool season grass prairie, or this once was pasture. This is now an idle open space that's basically in a cool season CRP program. And then also, most importantly, grazed pastures are very significant for birds, but of course there's that balance we need to find between how do we create habitat for birds and then also for what creates the source of our income. When it comes to where is those grasslands in Wisconsin, this map shows I want to point out the field green color. Those are areas that map as grasslands because of the abundance of surrogate grasslands, thanks to all of the farmers and ranchers that still are actively working the land in our state. That is the sole reason why we still have so much grass on the ground. And we are one of the top most likely places to provide grassland habitat for grassland birds in the upper Midwest. And so what is a grassland bird and what are some of those? Grassland bird is a species that needs a treeless open landscape and does not require trees during the breeding season. So these are birds that lay their eggs on the ground. They need open expanses of habitat. It doesn't all have to be the same thing, but when they're flying in the air, they want to be able to look down and see an open expanse that they can feel safe from predators, which is one of the key things that causes decline during the breeding season. Here are some other species that you might know, and I'd definitely the Cornell University Mackalaw Library, where these all came from, is also associated with that All About Birds website. Fantastic resource for learning more about any birds and also grassland birds in particular. And when it comes to habitat, they all are different. And that's what makes Wisconsin special. Again, thanks to the abundance of small farms across this landscape that provide the variability of habitat that these individual species need. So where you have some birds that can handle high levels of grazing intensity because they like super short grass. You have others that want dense, rank CRP fields that aren't tended, and then others like fields that are annually burned or mowed. It's just depending on how we do that habitat management and when that can negatively or positively affect the bird species that are using those sites. So, for example, the upland sandpiper, this is a threatened species. It's a shortgrass species. It likes to sit in it likes to breed and also hang out in vegetation that's real short to the ground. For some reason, there it goes. And it when these are very uncommon. I only know of 2 sites in Southwest Wisconsin right now where you can pretty consistently see them year after year. But they're magnificent. They look like they're out of place because you think a stork-like bird would not be found in a dry environment, but it loves our upland short grasslands. Eastern meadowlark is one that many are very familiar with. This is one of our more common grassland birds, but it is also a special concern species at this point. We're still seeing that decline of habitat happen. Henslow sparrow is a species that likes those real dense, rank is not always the best word, but thick prairie plantings, sometimes with some brushy habitat. So we could give it as an excuse to let's let that place go for a little while. It's going to support some Henslow sparrows. These are also on the state list of species of concern. It likes tall grass prairie. And then Bell's vireo is a very specialized bird that you will find within these grasslands, but it prefers brushy, as we've found, linear vegetation. So if you have a ravine with a lot of brushy shrubs and that's surrounded by open grasslands, that's a common place where you might find the Bell's vireo. There is this huge kind of, when they say an elephant in the room, right? We have our dependency and our need for economy. The rural economy that is based on grass-based agriculture is super important. And you can see on the sides on this photo the size of these bird nests and also the eggs. They're tiny. So how do we balance this out? There are a lot of resources out there that can help, and also Joy will be talking about some of those specific tips that are really applicable on a working farm. But there is for sure a lot of technical assistance to help you through some of those questions. And also there's currently a lot of investment in funding that is available for prescribed grazing plans and infrastructure, with some of those directly associated with supporting plans that promote balancing grassland birds with grazing. One I'd like to point out particularly is the Sand County Foundation is currently is really investing time and energy in promoting practices such as prairie strips, but also what we call prescribed grazing and funding for the grazing plans and also that infrastructure. For those of you who are interested in taking this the full next step, we have this exciting opportunity coming into the area. This has been very successful out west, and they're opening up a pilot program up here in Minnesota and Wisconsin. We will have an Audubon Conservation Ranching technical service provider who's going to be available to do outreach with anyone who's interested in learning more about the program. And at the same time, those farms and ranches that enroll in this program and follow the protocols that are developed will be able to sell their meat through this Audubon certified bird-friendly label, which really is attractive to certain customers that are willing to pay that price that we deserve for good farming practices, particularly when we're taking wildlife into consideration. And so finally, just a couple of references for you. I would advise, if you've never used Merlin, this is an amazing resource. This is an app you can download. You can listen to songs. You get a list of the species that are in your area, and then also you can actually get descriptions of them and then different pictures depending on the time of year and whether male, female, fledgling, youth, adult. So they'll give you that variety that you'll need. And then finally, there's a lot of individuals and groups and organizations that are available to help. All of those that are kind of clumped together on the left side are those that provide funding assistance or can direct you towards funding assistance. In the center are some great references for more information about birds and bird habitat. And to the right are some of the colleagues that I work with or have really provide great information about grazing, and also some other of those more practical considerations about how do I pay for this? What are some of the financial limitations and considerations I have to have? And then my information is down at the bottom. We have a website that does have additional information on this topic, and then many others like pollinators and habitat and savannas and prairies. And I'd encourage you to check that out as well. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Cindy. We do have one quick question in the chat that I thought I would throw to you since we have a couple minutes. So Lisa had asked, is there an acreage minimum for the Audubon program?
I don't have that at the tip of my fingers, but I'm happy to. The protocol is currently kept within their circles. We were able to see it when it was first under development, but the individual who's right now working with a number of ranches in Minnesota and Wisconsin that were prior under a different label. Once he's through with those, the local, assistant, the local, what do I call him? Boots on the ground guy is going to be available to meet with farmers and others to find out if it's the right fit for them.
Thanks. And
thanks. Just a quick follow-up, Elena. Sorry, would that be only for people in the southwestern part of the state, or is that statewide?
No, it is statewide. They have their goal is to enroll in the next 5 years. They're setting some very conservative goals, but they want to see 2 to 5 ranches enrolled in the program in different regions in the state: Central Sands, Northern Driftless area, Southern Driftless area, as examples, Southeast and also the Northeast across the next 5 years. So, they really want to be talking and out and about and really promoting this program. And I've had some of the beef from North Dakota. It is amazing.
Oh, okay. Not to monopolize, quick question. Is the program designed as a short-term or a long-term easement, or?
No, it's not an easement. It's a commodity-based. It's a commodity-based incentive program. So this is developed to encourage grazing that is bird friendly. Audubon is no intention of having any investment, permanent or otherwise, in property. It's getting those practices on the ground, and it's serving as that facilitator. And also, because of their reputation, they have that label that can be such a value as a commodity-based incentive for people.
Thanks, Cindy. And I also want to note you provided all of these great PDF resources, and Stephanie has been adding those into the chat for folks to grab or bookmark for looking at later. So thank you for that.
You're welcome.
All right. Well, that was a ton of information from Cindy, our content expert for the day. And we're also happy to have Joy Miller here as a citizen scientist who's been inspiring other women landowners to lead initiatives on their land for a variety of things, including how to protect birds. So also what you should know about Joy, she's an organic vegetable farmer at Keewaydin Farms, and also co-founded Driftless Curiosity, a nonprofit, along with her husband Rufus Hockey in 2021. In 2018, she earned her master's in liberal arts from Johns Hopkins University, where she studied environmental ethics, leadership, and food justice. In her graduate research project, Socially Responsible Food and Ethical Food Consumerism, she learned the importance of consumers making meaningful connections with their food. Her research inspired her to create unique programs and open Keewaydin Farms as a social space where people can deepen their connection with the land, learn about producing food, seek better solutions, express themselves artistically, and gratify their curiosity. Overall, she's a farmer, writer, director, and lifelong lover of all things curious. So thanks for joining us, Joy.
Thank you so much, Elena. Happy to be here with the WeWick team today. All right. Thank you so much for that great introduction, Elena. And thanks everybody for gathering here today to learn about our shared birds. I already have learned so much from Cindy with Southern Driftless Grasslands, and I'm excited to dig further into those resources. In alignment with the WeWick mission, I feel like we just all learn so much when we come together and share what we know. We hold a lot of knowledge and wisdom in these circles, and I have a deep gratitude for this organization bringing us together. And so when they asked me to talk about birds, I was like, all right, yeah, I love it. Be there. So we've been practicing bird-centered conservation at Keewaydin with intention since 2020, but I think longer than that. We've been farming organically since 2004, and I think that's one good step. I shared a quote here from David Attenborough that says, "Everyone likes birds. What wild creature is more accessible to our eyes and ears, as close to us and everyone in the world, as universal as a bird?" I feel that a lot of people have this deep connection with birds, both audibly and visually. They're just a really artistic animal. There's so much artistry in their being. And it's so important to have beauty upon the earth, just for the case of beauty, and that our ecosystem is a reflection of ourselves. And when we make space for these things, we truly enrich our own experience. So this is an aerial photo of our farm, Keewaydin Farms. It's located in Biola, Wisconsin, in the southwest part of the state. It's a 200-acre property. As I said, we've managed organically since 2004. And another main feature of our farm is that we use reduced tillage. Most of our gardens are no-till. And you can kind of see in the lower part of our land is a lot of grasslands, which we're developing into better bird habitat. We're currently working on that. I'll talk a little bit about that in the next few slides. So this is where we're at in the beautiful Driftless. So some of the things that we do here on our farm to practice bird-friendly farming are a little bit of a repeat from what Cindy said, but also in alignment. So organic practices, we don't spray anything, even the things that are organically acceptable. We just decided not to use those items because they, like Pyganic and things, they're expensive. We haven't had a lot of success with them, and they're still a broad spectrum chemical, so we shy away from those. We also have a plan to increase our perennial production and keep adding permaculture to the land. So each year, Rufus and I choose a crop that we want to add to the land that's a perennial. So we have hazelnuts, asparagus, fruit trees, lots of different berries, hazelnuts, aronia, elderberries. I'll talk more about our hay production in a minute. Planting trees and diverse natives is also really important. I was on actually a WeWick call earlier this year that talked about bringing in trees as one of the first elements to the land, because they attract birds, and then the birds will continue to plant more things for you. One good example of this is there was once just one mulberry tree on the farm. We haven't planted any mulberry trees, but the birds have planted the mulberry trees, and now we have around 30 mulberry trees on the farm. And then as far as the grazing, cut late and graze tall, which Cindy did a great job of talking about. We have just a really small flock right now of sheep and goats. So altering our hay production is one of the main strategies we use for increasing our habitat. So we have really reduced the amount of hay that we're cutting. And when we do cut hay, we wait until later in the season. July 15th is the date that I've found is appropriate for cutting for grassland birds. And then if you need to cut at the end of May, they say to wait 65 days before you cut again, to give the birds time to go through their cycle. And then I haven't personally done this yet, but another tip I got from a birding group was to cut outward from the middle of the field so that mobile birds have a chance to flee. If you cut from the outside in, you're kind of trapping them. But if you go to the middle and cut out, there is a chance that they can survive. And then the other thing is that we started really carefully calculating what our need is. My father-in-law was kind of the big haymaker on our farm, and it wasn't necessarily the need for our farm. He was selling it to horse farmers, sheep farmers, hobby farmers, and it just we decided we needed to take a closer look at that and decide what was the economic value compared to what the habitat value was. And we ended up just really reducing what we needed. There are lots of ways to make money from the land. And we decided for our practices and for our land that it was more valuable to us to have habitat than it was to make hay. And of course, we still do make some hay, and that does impact the land. But we try to do it in a more mindful way than we have in the past. One reason that this emerged is that Rufus would be out cutting hay and he would mow over nests and he would see the carnage basically. And that hurt him. And I think it's important to pay attention to those emotions, and it's important to sense into how our practices affect our ecosystem and then how that affects our own emotions. So I think leaving space to sense into, even if it's not intentional, the harm that we are doing in our management, and let that inform our practices. So of course it's not always possible to just leave your hay. We need it as part of our production. It is part of the bottom line, but I like to kind of reweave the idea of a bottom line to include the complexity that truly exists, and shifting our sense of value beyond just economic value to values in the other species that we cohabitate with. So in 2021, we started the Bird Lovers Program, which is a workshop that we hosted the first weekend of June. We gather some local birding experts and aspiring birders on the land. We had birder Craig Thompson from the DNR Conservation Heritage Program come out, and we hiked the land. We grab our binoculars and our field guides and we see what we can see, and it was just such a fun time. It felt like there was just a really childlike excitement, and almost like the excitement of finding a morel mushroom when you like spot something that's just makes your heart jump a little bit. It was really cool to see birds and spot birds that I hadn't noticed before. Rufus, my husband, has lived here his whole life, and on that day he saw at least 3 new birds that he hadn't identified on our land before, which just really kind of opens our lens too of, we get so busy in our farming career and, working specifically in the gardens that, just like Cindy said, sometimes you forget to look up and recognize how much beauty is really there. So bringing visitors to the farm has been a really uplifting experience for both Rufus and I, to see the joy that it brings people and to also open our own eyes further to understand who are we really sharing our habitat with. And one of my favorite outcomes from the Bird Lovers Program was the number of bobolinks and meadowlarks that we saw, and getting a deeper understanding of how they've been in decline and how precious this habitat really is. Like I love to tell everyone that Craig Thompson said he saw more bobolinks here than he's seen anywhere in the state. And I'm like, to me, that is so much more valuable than selling hay. It's a lot more fun to look at birds than load hay in the summer too. So if you're interested, we'll be hosting this program again the first weekend of June, Saturday, June 3rd. So we'll do some birding, and we'll also talk about land management. So Rufus and I will talk about some of our management, some of the strategies that we're using, and walk around to different areas of kind of like pockets of different bird habitat. Also on this day, we're going to have one of our board members, Colleen Robinson, on the WeWiC calls before. She's in the Madison area, and her business is Nature's Good Company. And she's going to be leading, she's a certified mindful outdoor guide, and she'll be leading a mindful outdoor experience really focused on birds. So it's a little bit of a slower, more deliberate, intentional walk around than just kind of hiking with the binoculars, and it includes an invitation to just really sense into the sounds, to not so much focus on the scientific or the identification parts of birding, but to really sense into our deep connection to these animals, to how they affect us emotionally, and how they really enrich our habitat and our well-being. So this is a little bit of a repeat, but I think it's important to talk about Wisconsin conservation priorities and to really learn about these birds that need our help. Eastern meadowlarks, so all of these are a special concern, fully protected in the state of Wisconsin. The first two, the meadowlark and the bobolink, are grassland birds. And the last one, the red-headed woodpecker, is more of a woodland bird. So whenever you see one of these, I like to, tip your hat to it or say hello, or pat yourself on the back for giving them a good habitat to live in. And yeah, I just think these are so important to pay attention to who needs our help. So here's a quote that just says, "Birds are indicators of the environment. If the birds are in trouble, we know that we'll soon be in trouble." We know the old canary in the coal mine saying that the birds will tell us when there's an issue of concern. So I kind of like to think of this as nature's feedback loop. So we have feedback loops in our own body and our own nervous system. If we break our arm, the body sends us a signal through our nervous system that says, you need to go to the hospital. There's pain, there's a problem. And I like to think of, in a larger sense, in the ecosystem, if we break an arm of the ecosystem, it sends us signals of distress, decline, disappearance. And we need to respond to that with action to try to relieve that decline, to try to create hospice and cultivate caring environments where things can thrive. So I think that that's part of our responsibility as conservation advocates. Pest control. So if it's not enough that they're just beautiful and joyful to be around, they also help you in the farming department. So these two species, the eastern and western meadowlarks and the upland sandpiper, are both pasture-specific species that eat a lot of insects. So when you see these guys, also thank them for helping you out with your pest control. There's lots of ways besides chemicals to manage pests, and birds might be the most beautiful way. Not only insects, but also hawks and owls will take out rodents. I'm always grateful for that too, because if you have a farm, if you're storing grain anywhere or vegetables, rodents have your number. If you've got hawks, when I look out and see the hawks swooping over the grasslands, I'm always excited that helping us with the rodent pressure. And then, of course, beyond agriculture, just into the sense of well-being and values, I think flourishing and joy are wonderful reasons to practice conservation on the land. And listening to birdsong specifically has an effect on our mental state. I found a piece of research that said listening to birdsong appears to have a positive and significant impact on mental health and mood. This new research suggests. And investigators found that people who listened to recordings of bird singing experienced a significant reduction in anxiety and paranoia. So we all have busy lives that require a lot of us, and especially on the land, if you're on a farm, there's an endless list of things to do. I feel like I never cross everything off my list, but when you can coexist in this area that sounds so peaceful and really gives you an idea of joy and flourishing, it helps. It really helps. And one of the things people notice, especially this time of year when they come to the farm, is they notice the bird sounds, and you'll be having a conversation, and you kind of see their wheels turning, or their mind is kind of shifting into, they're listening. What's that bird? What's that sound? And I love it when people connect that way and start to see themselves in the ecosystem, that beauty. And back to the idea of diversity. So Cindy also shared, we have just such an incredible diversity here in Wisconsin because of the migratory flyways that we're on. And the color, the sound, the behavior, the flight patterns, they're all so different. And I think birds just give us a really open invitation to love and appreciate diversity in a deeper way. You see it in the birds, you see it in the land, you see it in the people. If we were all the same, it wouldn't be as much fun. And the birds show us that. So. And of course, if you want diversity in the sky, you got to have diversity on the land. And that's one of the things that we try to create here on the farm. We have pastured animals, we've got woodland, grassland. In the middle there, you can see some hazelnuts, hiking trails, lots of pollinator plantings, elderberries, and we just try to create as much diversity as we can, and the birds show up when you provide what they need. And so I learned about Wild Farm Alliance through WeWick, and I've talked to, I don't know if she's on the call today, but Shelly Connor a couple times. And they are developing an Excel tool with companion documents that helps growers assess their landscape to identify opportunities to better attract beneficial birds for pest control. So this is, hi, Shelly. This is all peer-reviewed research that links how the birds are using native plants. And it was developed in California, specifically with 160 birds. But I was excited to get her email a couple weeks ago that said they're funding to expand this tool now, and they're creating it for the upper Midwest habitats. And that should be ready, I think, this year. And she's inviting landowners and farmers to help review this tool, which I've signed up to help with because I think it's just fascinating and another great tool to add to the many tools that Cindy also shared that Southern Driftless Grasslands has available too. And it's exciting to see all of these resources coming together to support grassland birds. So their goal at Wild Farm Alliance is to inspire 10% of farms to join the Farm Flyway Trail. So that's definitely a big part of our purpose here on the farm, is to create space for more than just humans, more than just food production, but for all the diversity that lives here on the farm. Super appreciate you guys highlighting some of the things we're doing, and enjoy the birds this year.
Thanks so much, Joy. I wasn't able to see the chat there while I was sharing my screen, but hopefully we got a link to your website and the link to your event. Yeah, I do see those in there. So thank you so much for sharing all of that.
Question about parsnips and invasives. Yeah, so parsnips specifically, we actually harvest and eat. We say if you can't beat it, eat it. So we actually put them in our CSA. We pull them up. They're same as the garden parsnip this time of year. Well, it's getting close to the time where they start to give you the rash, but you can actually pull them right out of the ground and eat them. They're wonderful. And then also using burning, prescribed burns is one way. We've done some tarping to try to do some prairie restoration. To one of the advice that Craig Thompson gave us was to try to get out some of the, like we have an area that's like just a lot of wild carrot. So we might do a prescribed burn later this year, and just trying to get in more native diversity. But it's definitely the long game with the invasives and trying to bring balance with more of the native plants.
I see Chris added a link to the Queen Bee Sessions podcast that Joy just did with Chris Marion. So definitely grab that and bookmark it. And thanks for doing that.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you, Lisa, for sharing that memory about the prairie bird study that introduced you to investigating the upland sandpiper more. Amazing. I have to say, I was not familiar with the upland sandpiper bird before. My little 8 acres is very wooded, but across the road from me, we have a neighbor who is very much an open grassland piece of land. And I was up there recently talking to them on their front porch and was realizing this is a totally different symphony of birds up here. Different, just in that small separation of areas. So,
hey, Chris, I see that you have a comment.
Well, I just wanted to circle. Thank you guys both. What amazing and really grounding and centering information today. I want to go back to Cindy's invitation to look into the Audubon program. How do we reach those folks with the certification? I went through the chat and I couldn't find how to connect with them.
Yeah, I can speak to that. The reason why you can't is because it's still a pilot program and they're testing the waters out with specific farms that have been part of, I think, something called Blue Sky. I don't want to speak the wrong term, so please, I don't want to share that information incorrectly, but they're hiring right now. We will have, there's a gentleman who is going to be in the area who will be available to work with farmers. Please check back with me towards the fall. SDG is one of the partners with Audubon Conservation Ranching, and we will be promoting this through field days and creating connections for people to reach the biologists who will be available to work with people. So that's why it's not in the chat yet. It's a sneak peek to an opportunity coming to the area, which I just think is great. We have so many ways that people keep on saying we need commodity-based reasons to do good. We don't need subsidies, and it may not solve all of our problems. Joy is a great example of your farm is amazing. What you were just saying about having all of that variety, but understanding that it's like that it together is creating what you want to have around you, and making those very conscious decisions and thinking things through is so wonderful. And we need to bring other people to that table, and hopefully this is a program that can.
Like shifting the sense of value, I think, has been really huge for us, and finding other places where the birds actually have a value. So one of the things we're developing is a campground and on-farm stays and events, and the birds are an absolute draw. When we talk about the birds that are here and we advertise, and part of my strategy on social media is, if anybody follows me, I share a lot of stuff about birds I follow Audubon and bird conservation groups, and a platform called BirdNote that shares audio clips of birds that are narrated. And I like to just keep pushing bird media out there and drawing people to that. And I think that it has its own value. When people want to come to the Driftless or to come to a certain piece of land because the birds are there, that brings in money through a different stream of revenue. So getting creative with how to shift value onto the birds has been huge for us.
It's so important, even if you have small acreage, to realize that you can make a difference. If you have 10 acres and you have it in prairie, say, and you have a neighbor who has a large pasture, if there's a wood line of trees in between those, and that's cut down, you just expanded that by another 10 acres to create a larger mosaic. And it's that mosaic of grassland that supports so many different species, just like Joy was speaking to, with pasture and prairie and pollinator plantings and prescribed fire. So different levels and scale and sizes and heights of grass. And there's just so much that we know, and sometimes we feel helpless because, we don't have a lot of, we don't own a big acreage. Well, you don't have to. You just work with your neighbors too, and start sharing what you know, and making that like a collective interest amongst people.
Thanks, Cindy. We did have someone asking of a resource for educational signs that could be put in yards to spark curiosity and help connect folks with resources. Any thoughts on that?
I don't know of any signs. We should make one though. We should create a bird-friendly sign.
I think that's a great idea.
The No Mow May, we could create a sign for no mow birds or something.
Yeah, and I think having those dates in mind too is useful for people who have large grasslands. I appreciated hearing those details.
Oh, Wild Farm Alliance will have signs. Awesome.
Farmland flyaway signs. Oh, excellent.
Love it.
But thank you for joining us, everyone.
Thank you so much for highlighting some of our work.